A good day. I just crossed under Highway 90 on the Suwannee River section of the Florida Trail, and all I can say so far is hats off to the Florida Trail crew, because the hurricane did a lot of damage in here. And I think the whole Suwannee section, but we'll see. Anyway, for Florida, it's a cold day, supposed to get below freezing tonight. So on this trail, like the Arizona Trail, you can never tell. So, bring the right kind of clothing for any conditions. Trail magic. Just found some trail magic. Got a nice crisp apple. And now I'm looking for a flat spot for the night. Got about 45 minutes for the sunset, and I don't have to worry about water. They had water there also, but now I just ran out of trail here somewhere. I better backtrack. This is definitely trail. Oh, I see some ribbon. Looks like I'm going through this clear cut here. It's gonna get cold tonight. Oh, freezing, so I'll get set up on putting on everything I'm carrying. Good morning. It's a cold one this morning, and it's not easy getting out of that tent on a cold morning, but if you do get that body furnace moving, your blood flowing, you warm up a lot quicker. So I'm moving along pretty fast this morning, but the sun is coming up. Looks like it's gonna be a beautiful day. It'll warm up quick. And I have to say that Mother Nature did a real job on this Suwannee section of trail. And again, hats off to the Florida Trail Association to clear it out. It had to be a big job, and they did it quick. So people have asked me what I think of the Florida Trail, and I love it. It's a great trail to do in the winter. Unlike the Arizona Trail, on the second time I did the Arizona Trail, if you remember, if you watch my videos, couldn't finish because so much snow shut down the Grand Canyon. They had damage on the north rim, and you couldn't get through. Well, even though it's cold here, especially this morning, you're not going to have so much snow that you can't get through. Not that they don't have snow here, just less than a month ago they had a few inches. But anyway, for me, I would start south in December, January, and work my way north. And Florida, a lot of wild parts of Florida, and that trail goes through all of them. Would I come back here RV camping? No. Those days are really over. I mean, it's just getting ridiculous everywhere, but I've been trying to finish this trail, and my wife's with me this year in the motorhome, and I'm trying to put her in safe places where I can do my sections, and it's really hard. I mean, there's state parks perfectly situated all along the trail that would be perfect, but you can't get into them. So, you know, if you're a Floridian, you can make reservations in these parks a month ahead of out-of-staters, which is a problem. So I made reservations strategically along the trail where I could, but you know, by the time I get into the pool, there's a few days here, a few days there, and then you play campground bingo all winter looking for people that have canceled. And you have to be there when they've canceled, because those last seconds, because everybody's doing the same thing I'm doing. They're playing campground bingo and looking at it all the time. They have a notification on the site, and I've put hundreds of notifications in for days that I want, and I've never ever heard from the state of Florida, so I don't think notifications work. And it's not just RV camping. I mean, it's I'm looking at going to Glacier. I've been hiking in Glacier my whole life, and now, just like so many other things, so Boz Allen, the spy agency that runs recreation.gov, is making a ton of money, tens of thousands of dollars on lotteries now. So to get a backcountry permit in Glacier, the permit system was never perfect, but now it's beyond ridiculous. So you have to pay $10 to get into a lottery, non-refundable. And if you don't win the lottery, then you don't get the opportunity to make an early reservation for a backcountry site. And then you have to just show up, and you get, you know, I think 30% of the tent sites are held back for walk-ins. Well, 30% isn't a lot, and each of those campsites out there might have 4 or 5. 5 would be high sites in them. And so your chances of getting a walk-in are really slim. And do you want to go to all the trouble of spending money to get out there to find out you can't hike there? Well, I'm going to do that this year, and if I can't hike there, I'll go down into the Bob and hike the Bob. It's beautiful. But anyway, it's just pretty crazy how all this works today. My wife and I sold everything back in the 1970s, in our 20s, and bought an Airstream and just decided to travel, and we're so glad we did. I mean, we had to work. We'd pretty much work in the winters, save our money, and backpack all summer. But we never had to make a reservation. You just showed up, and there was always a site. But those days are long gone. And a lot of young people are doing that today. They're living the van style. I mean, I run into a lot of these hikers out here that when they're not hiking, they live in a van. And to me, that's kind of sucking the juice out of life. More power to them. And if you want to read about our adventures back then, you can get a free book on Amazon on the 15th and the 1st of every month, and it's called Ramblings. And you can see how it was back in the day. This section of trail pretty much follows the Suwannee River. You can see there's a lot of sandbars. I just helped a guy get in his canoe back where I had breakfast at those Chickies, and he had a load of gear, heavy canoe, but he didn't want to end up in this cold water this morning, so I got him in and held his lines while he got into the canoe. But it'd be a good float along here. Probably not one of my favorite rivers in Florida. I like the crystal clear ones, but it is beautiful. And I'm sure all this hurricane damage will eventually meld into the ground and it'll all come back natural. It's almost 10:30 and the sun's up and starting to warm up, but still not warm enough to start peeling layers. And I really have to pay attention on this trail looking for blazes, because there are a lot of short reroutes around some of the worst hurricane damage that they'll probably come back and work on later. But I was just on an old road bed, and I have a tendency to daydream, and path of least resistance, I kept walking that road for probably 100 yards further than I should have. I missed the turn, and again, they're kind of hard to see, because sometimes when it turns off of a road, it has to go around the original trail through to get around some of the hurricane damage. So just a matter of paying attention and not daydreaming. But I've always been a daydreamer, so I get off trail a lot. So on this section of trail, I'm hiking without my poles and without my umbrella, which saves me a little weight. Also, I'm just eating cold, which I think I actually prefer more than hot. You know, if I could have the option to make a hot meal once in a while, I'd probably carry it. I don't know what would be the lightest, easiest option to maybe give me 2 or 3 hot meals in a week. But really, after experimenting with a lot of things, I'm perfectly happy to eat cold. And as far as the poles, I think I actually walk, at least I feel like I walk a lot faster without poles. But I miss them, because especially on this trail, there's a lot of vines. I've tripped up about 3 times already where poles would have maybe caught me. And I just prefer poles, so I won't be making a habit of not bringing poles. But if you see YouTubes of really ultralight packers that are moving fast, you know, like Punisher, like Peg Leg, they're super light, they're not carrying poles, and they can crank out some miles, that's for sure. Anyway, the umbrella, I use my umbrella all the time. I would say don't carry an umbrella if you're just going to have it in your pack, but I use it for sun. I knew there was going to be enough understory here that I wouldn't be out in full sun. I use it for rain. You know, when you get a pounding rain, even if you've got rain gear, it's just going to be hitting you in the face. You put that umbrella on, and I wear my umbrella with my rain gear in really bad weather. I'm glad to have it. I think mine is 6 ounces. Well worth the price of admission into my pack. So I set my tent up to dry out after all that cold weather last night. I had a lot of condensation, mostly from me breathing in there. But I have to say, as much as I'd like to lose weight and I keep looking at tents and looking at tents, I never give up my Hillyberg because I don't have to deal with the condensation. It keeps it at bay, what little I do get. And I am, when I get done with this trip though, gonna try some modifications that might knock 8 to 10 ounces off this tent without actually affecting its storm worthiness. But this is the simplest tent in the world to set up, and I think when people buy tents, they really don't think about what kind of conditions they're going to have to set these things up in. I mean, I've set this thing up in many hurricanes and blizzards, and I mean, I can have it up in under a minute and be inside of it with all my gear. It's just a really simple design. I see they have a tent coming out called Wind Anchor, which looks interesting. There's a Kickstarter thing. I don't know when they're going to start actually selling them, but it's pretty much a Hillyberg with a full use of the inside. So this is half tent and half vestibule, and I don't need that vestibule. I'd rather have one whole opening, but I do need that double wall because that's what keeps the condensation at bay. And you know, this thing will last me years and years. That's the other thing. I just have a hard time pulling the trigger on Dyneema, which is about the only way I'm going to get lighter, because they just don't last. I've had these things for 25 years, and the first one was an Octo I had for, oh God, 17 years. I think I paid $400 for that tent back in the day, and sold it for $300 after 17 years, and it was still in great shape. The guy I sold it to on Marketplace was tickled pink to get it. Now this one, so I bought the Enon, which at that time was made out of 600 Curlon, and I think they used that to keep the tent light, and it worked fine for many, many seasons for me. And the year that I did the Arizona Trail the second time and that pack rat chewed the heck out of it, it was already pretty well shot. I was trying to get through the trail with it, and it did rip out in the top sheet where nothing had chewed on it, so that had to be that Curlon. But you know, they went to 1,000. Well, this is 1,000, and I don't think I'm ever gonna have a problem with it, but I've already got a lifetime of use out of this one. So anyway, I'm gonna dry it out here and hit the trail again, so when I set up tonight, everything will be nice and dry. So a little dirt road walking. I just saw a sign that I'd never seen before. It said, "Hikers, please put a leash on Baxter so he doesn't follow you." And then out comes Baxter barking at me. But I just talked to him and told Baxter to stay at home, and he did. He's a good old dog. So I always forget to pull my camera out when I need to. I just ran into Just, and if you watch my Florida videos last year, you know, he's a guy that I ran into, and we walked on and off together from the beginning. And then I ran into him again up by Okeechobee, Billy Goat Days. Anyway, he's down here finishing the trail this year, and he's decided, he's retired. He's decided this is his retirement. He's gonna come and hike the Florida Trail every year. Next year, the Lake to Sea, and the next year the Green Swamp area. And he's just trying to finish up the Panhandle this year. Anyway, sounds like a plan to me. This would be a great place to camp for the night. Got my own beach. But there's just too much daylight to burn. Next time around, maybe. Most of the Florida Trail is pretty flat, but this section actually has had quite a few ravines you go down into and come out of, so that's good for my legs. Unlike flat Florida, get to do a little climbing today. So when you're young and have a lot of balance and agility, you probably just skip right across that bridge, but when you're in your upper 70s, that's what you call a crawler. You just crawl across. Sun's not out of the trees yet, but I'm hungry. I'm stopping for breakfast. So this morning I'm going to talk about having a checklist. You know, my wife and I in our motorhome, we have a checklist, even though we've been at this forever. And we go over that checklist every time we pull out, because there's so many things you can forget and it can get expensive. And backpacking's no different. And usually I'm on top of that, and this trip was a wake-up call for me. So I've spent so much time playing campground bingo down here, trying to get my wife into certain state parks along the sections of trail I need to do. And I just got to Stephen Foster State Park, which I'll probably reach today. And I was kind of in a hurry to get out the next morning, have her drive me back down to the end of the Suwannee section west, and then I'd walk back to her. And the other thing is, my daughter moved from Florida. She actually was in Seattle, and I said, why'd you move from Seattle to Florida? And she said because of all the smokes and fires out there, she was just tired of it. I said, well, try hurricanes for a couple of years. And she kind of poo-pooed that until she got hit by two of them, moved back to Michigan, and had a storage unit down here. So she flew down, and I'm going to be her U-Haul. I've got all of her stuff in the motorhome bays. I brought a couple of kayaks this year to float some of these rivers. And so my backpacking stuff is not in one central area like it has always been. I've got it spread all over wherever I can find a nook and cranny to stick it. And so when I left on this trip, I didn't go over a checklist. I have one on my phone. I just thought I had everything. I've done this forever. I know what I'm doing. No. When I got out of the car, when my wife dropped me off, I knew I'd left my poles. And I'm kind of glad, because it forced me to hike without poles over some pretty nasty terrain with all this hurricane damage. You know, so today I haven't run into any hurricane damage. So probably the first 20 miles, if you're going west from White Springs, you won't have any, but then the next 30-40 miles you're going to have a lot of it. That's where the storm must have gone through. But it's, like I say, it's all cleaned up. It's great. Not a big problem. You just have to pay attention. But back to the list. So then I didn't realize that I'd left my 2 Ziploc cups that I use for eating bowls, and my spoon is in that. You know, I found a spork, plastic spork. That's what I'm eating with. Cleaned it real good. And I'm eating out of my cereal bag. And then it wasn't until really last night, and my phone's starting to die, and I've got a brick to charge it. I didn't bring a cable. You know, I usually take 2 bricks and have all the cables all in one Ziploc bag. Well, I just took 1 brick out because I knew I wouldn't need 2 on this section. But I didn't grab a cable. You know, if I had gone over my list, I would say, you need a cable, idiot. Anyway, whether you're going out, if you're on a through hike, you know, you're probably going to end up having everything, and then you're just going to have to replace what you lose or leave along the trail because you're not thinking. But if you're just going out for a week at a time, you really need to go over your list. And you know, when I get home, I clean everything up, I wash everything up, dry everything, usually put it all back into one place. But I was just kind of thrown off this week, and that won't happen again, I guarantee it. So the thing that I forgot to bring and I missed the most, and probably the most important thing when you're doing a through hike, were my stroopwafels. I didn't bring my stroopwafels because they go in my Ziploc containers, which I didn't bring either. If I would have thought about my stroopwafels, I would have thought about the containers and brought both of them. So everybody knows that, you know, you can live for days without food and water, but you can't go very long without stroopwafels. And so I'm in trouble. I've got to get back to try and finish today so I can have some stroopwafels tomorrow. Anyway, keep smiling.